One thing I didn't know, this came from one of our meetings, is that the port, although it looks fairly small on the commercial side with some of the other larger ports, it's 28th in the nation, right behind San Diego in the terms of cargo that they move. 100,000, I think it's 100,000 tons behind San Diego. And I can tell you the leadership over there is very focused on getting and exceeding San Diego's throughput. So they're doing very, very well.
No
We've got great leadership there.
What are you talking about? Leadership is awesome.
What was that?
The leadership is awesome.
They are. The leadership is awesome. They're doing great things and doing good things there. So, did I answer your question, sir? Okay. All right, so that's some of the construction projects. The Triton, doing well. We expect to see between 40 and 50 personnel this year that are committed to this program. We'll see them at Point Mugu. Some of that will be a mix of military and civilians. But as this program continues to evolve, we expect, I think the program right now is about 700 sailors plus their families, so about 2,200 people by the time this is fully implemented and in place at Point Mugu, Naval Base Material Center. The Fire Scout I mentioned, ongoing testing, and we expect that to continue into 2014 and beyond. Mission Package Support Facility. So I mentioned in my last brief, but I think it's worth reviewing. The Navy is buying some new ships. And we understand that there is a demand for ships, but what we've tried to do here is be innovative in that is one of the types of ships. So there's really two designs. And what we've decided to do is just take a hull form and then be able to plug and play different capabilities in a big military Connex box, if you will. Big military boxes that have different equipment in them. So if a ship is out and it's doing an anti-mine scenario or capability, and something happens where they have to embark Marines, they can pull into port, they can swap out some boxes, some weapon systems, and then redeploy in a different configuration, really giving the Navy more bang for the buck for that ship. I mention that because all of those mission modules, those packages, will be supported and maintained on the West Coast here at Fort Wayne. So that's a tremendous capability for, I think the original buy was intended for about 55 ships. We may be looking maybe about 30 or so, 30 or 35. But all those mission packages, and there are about between 10 and 15 of pieces to each one of those. All of those will be maintained here at Fort Wayne. I'll tell you about the long lines at the barbershop for all the Seabees. Well, we're excited that the Navy's restructuring some of the reserve battalions. So they were all over the country. 3 of those reserve battalions will now be assigned here. So what that means is we only take the active duty component of those battalions, bring them here to Fort Hueneme, 10 to 15 or so for each one of those battalions. But now when those battalions do some of their annual training, we will see about 200 of those folks come about every quarter. They will still, and then when they deploy, they will mobilize through Fort Hueneme as they have been doing. But that's exciting. So we're taking folks that normally call Washington, Texas, and Wisconsin home. We're actually bringing them here and showing them what it's like to live and operate in Fort Hueneme. And if you've been keeping track of the weather, as somebody mentioned, I think the hardest part is going to be getting them to go back to Texas.
Very true.
Next, please. We continue to do well in energy and environment issues, which is some of the things that the Chief of Naval Operations has made a focus of effort for the Navy. We continue, this year we expect to erect a wind turbine, one of 7 wind turbines at San Nicolas Island. And we continue to be recognized in environmental awards. I think the count now is 30 since 1990 for some of our environmental efforts, not only at Mugu, Hueneme, and also San Nicolas Island. We continue to be very, very active in the community with some partnerships with science, technology, engineering, and math. I think the latest count is about 10 active partnerships between military units and schools, including Hueneme High, because we understand that you have to grow that next level of leaders, of top flight engineers. I haven't mentioned it yet, but we have 3 warfare centers here, unlike any other base in the country. What does that mean? We have some of the top engineers and scientists in the Navy who work here at Naval Base Ventura County. We need to continue that, so that's why we are active in the community, making sure that we've got that level of talent available in the community to help us meet our mission. I mentioned encroachment a little bit before in the spectrum management for radio signals and communications, but it's also important that we try and avoid encroachment on the shore. So that's a picture of Point Mugu. NAS Oceana on the East Coast looked like that 60 years ago, and now if I showed you a picture of that, you'd see strip malls and homes right around the airfield. And what that does is create some frictions with the community. I think I mentioned to you a couple years ago, an F-18 Hornet, a fighter jet, took off out of Oceana, and a mile and a half after it took off, I think it was north of the field, it had engine problems, and the jet crashed into an apartment complex around 9:30 in the morning. Both pilots ejected and survived. And there was no loss of life, but about 9 or 10 people were injured on the ground. 2 months later, we have a jet over at Point Mugu that came back because of some fuel problems, and it crashed into a farmer's field. And nobody was hurt on the ground. Unfortunately, the pilot lost his life. But it shows you the very real differences between an area that is encroached and one that is not. And we're very fortunate at Point Mugu that we're not seeing those encroachment efforts, but we're always looking to be good neighbors and good partners. So we are, there's a TOD program that allows us to do a joint land use study. So we're doing that. That's ongoing right now to understand what good growth means for the community and for the Navy. And also we're doing a study to understand some of the noise complaints and noise infrastructure that we have at Point Mugu as we're flying. Some of you may know the VX-9, some of the fighter jets out of China Lake have been here now for several weeks operating in the area, and I've reached out to many of the local community to see if we've gotten any noise complaints, because we haven't, and I've talked to Oxnard, talked to Mayor Sharkey, and also the mayor in Camarillo, and we haven't heard any of those noise complaints either. So we had about 18 jets here for a while operating, so that's good news. That's good news that we're not realizing some of the complaints. One of the things that we have that's a tool for us, which is DoD-wide, it's called REPI, and it's Readiness Environmental Protection Integration, where the DoD can partner with local entities to help with encroachment efforts. So we would partner with a local entity to help keep an area that is agricultural and maintain that, so that there's not high rises that then look over the fence line, or those strip malls that I mentioned that will then complain about noise. We love strawberries. Strawberries don't complain about noise, and we want to keep it that way. So that's a great tool that we have. Next, please. So the budget was signed, and we're trying to understand what that means for us. We know it's not sequester, but not really what we had asked for, so it's somewhere in the middle. So that money is going through DC, going to the regional commander, and then going out to the bases in the region. There are 11 bases in the Southwest region. So we're really trying to understand what that means. We haven't really gotten a lot of hard numbers on what our budget's going to look like, but we are starting to see some money flowing to the installations, which will help in tackling some of the long overdue maintenance projects that we want to do on the base. But one thing we do know, it's not business as usual. I look at every dollar that we spend to make sure that it's an efficient use of the taxpayer dollar, because there's not extra money around. We've been told that, and we understand that, so we're trying to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. Next. Okay, so we've certainly got some challenges, but I've always told the staff that I'm an optimistic person by nature. So instead of challenges, we call them opportunities. All right, what can we do Now that we know the funding stream is not what it has been, how do we become creative? Right, to steal a line from the Seabees, we can do, right? So we've got a mission to do, we've got to take care of our sailors and their families, and the Navy depends on us, the nation depends on us to execute our mission. So what do we have to do to get the job done? We have a great message here in that Naval Base Ventura County is growing, and this is the first time in many years that we've started to see that shift, especially over at Point Mugu. It's already tight at Port Hueneme, but at Mugu, people used to come over and see empty hangars. It's getting to the point now, we're getting calls, no kidding, a couple of times a week. I want to bring this unit there, I want to bring this unit there. And our first question is, tell me what you need, and I'll tell you if I have any room for it. The Coast Guard has been talking about coming to Naval Base Ventura County for about 10 years now. I personally toured a couple of their flag officers, and it seems like they come out every 6 months. What do you have? And guess what? Every time they come out, the footprint that we can squeeze them into gets smaller and smaller because we've got missions coming to Naval Base Ventura County. That's a good thing. I see an economic boom for the community, but also viability for the base. And people are starting to realize how critical this is to our nation's defense. And they love coming here. They love coming to this community. And again, just like the VX9 folks, I talked to their CO. He said the hardest job for me is going to be able to get those folks on a bus and take them back up to China Lake, because they truly love being and living in this community. Some of the local impacts, I want to make sure that you're aware of this. I sat down with, we've got a public-private venture for housing on the bases. Port Hueneme is at 99% occupancy for housing. Camarillo housing is at 90%, and at Point Mugu, we're almost full, probably in the low 90s. And that extra percentage is really people turning over houses and redoing the carpets and those kind of things. So as home values and rents have increased in the community, a lot of people are deciding to live on base, but also a lot more people are coming to the area. So that's a good thing. One of the things that we have not been successful, and part of this is the budget. We have some townhomes, specifically on Port Hueneme, that we use for Navy Gateway Inn and Suites. When people come in for an extended stay, we would house them in those areas. Because of a ongoing talks to acquire them, because they were basically leased. We leased them for a very long time. Now we're in talks to acquire them, but we didn't have the money because of the budget. So you can't really start talking to somebody about buying something if you don't have the money in hand. So because of that, we had to move folks out of those areas. Some of those were sailors were living, others are that we use for temporary lodging. So we've got to move those out. So a lot of those folks are now going to be going out in town, in the local area, looking for a little bit longer term lodging. So I think that will have a direct impact on Port Hueneme and some of the establishments here. And along with some of the reserve folks that I told you coming here, I would expect that you will see increased business opportunity and revenues in the local community as we go forward. Okay. So key takeaways, we're growing. As we start to execute this pivot to the Pacific, we're uniquely poised because of the port, because of the airfield, because of the sea test range, and because of those world-class scientists. We are key in this executing this pivot to the Pacific that I mentioned earlier. Your Navy continues to be the